Honestly, if there was an Olympic medal for tripping over thin air right in front of your absolute soulmate, well, my soulmate. He just doesn't know it yet. I'd be standing on the podium with the gold around my neck and a very bruised ego. I'm telling you, it was proper embarrassing. There I was, clutching my battered copy of Wuthering Heights like it was some sort of shield, and Ollie Finch, yes. The Oliver Finch with the messy dark hair and the paint-stained fingers was just standing there by the lockers, looking all moody and brilliant. I reckon my brain just decided to stop communicating with my feet. 1 minute I'm gliding okay, maybe not gliding, more like shuffling, and the next, I'm basically doing a faceplant into the floor tiles of the C-block corridor, and the worst part. My pen case flew open, dozens of glitter pens, 3 highlighters, and my favorite lucky eraser went skittering across the lino like they were trying to escape my shame. "You all right there, Poppy?" His voice, it's like warm cocoa on a rainy Tuesday in Somerset. I looked up, and there he was, actually crouching down to help me. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I really did. But instead, I just gave him this sort of manic, toothy grin that probably made me look like a startled hamster. "Oh, brilliant. Thanks, just testing the gravity. It's still working, in case you were wondering," I blurted out. Honestly, why am I like this? Why can't I be one of those girls who drops a silk scarf and looks mysterious? No, I'm Poppy Higgins, the girl who tests the gravity of the English department. Ollie actually chuckled, a real, genuine chuckle that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. He handed me my scented strawberry eraser, which is deeply uncool for a Year 12 student. Let's be real, and his fingers brushed mine for half a second. I think my heart actually did a backflip. "Gravity's definitely functioning," he said, his voice all rumbly and nice. "See you in art later." I nodded so hard I nearly gave myself whiplash. As he walked away, I just sat there on the floor for a moment, clutching my strawberry eraser like it was a holy relic. "Poppy, get up. You look like a lost property item." That was Daisy, my absolute best mate, and the only person who knows that I've had a crush on Ollie Finch since the 3rd day of Year 7, when he let me use his sharpener. She hovered over me, shaking her head, but she had that little smirk on her face. "You know the one, the I'm going to tease you about this for the next 3 years" smirk. He touched my eraser. "Days," I whispered, finally scrambling to my feet and dusting off my skirt. He practically touched my hand. It's basically a proposal at this point. "You're such a melt," Daisy laughed, hooking her arm through mine as we headed towards the canteen. "Come on, let's get some chips before the Year 11s colonize the entire seating area. You need sustenance if you're going to survive an hour of art with your fiancé." We squeezed into our usual corner of the 6th form common room, the air smelling of toasted sandwiches and damp blazes, the classic scent of a British autumn term. I leaned in close, dropping my voice because, honestly, the walls have ears in this school, and those ears usually belong to the gossip squad in the drama department. "Right, but seriously," I said, poking at my chips. Did he look at me like I was a total weirdo? Or was it more of a "she's quirky and I find it endearing" kind of look? "Be honest, Days, I can take it." Daisy popped a chip in her mouth and looked thoughtful. "I'd say it was 60% is she okay, and 40% she's quite cute for someone who can't walk in a straight line. It's a solid start. Poppy, better than last week when you accidentally called the headmaster Dad." I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "We don't talk about the headmaster incident. That's been buried in the vault of eternal shame. The thing is, being 17 is just a series of mildly traumatic events held together by the hope that your crush might like your Instagram story, isn't it? It's all so dramatic. Every look feels like a plot twist. Every hello feels like a season finale, and Ollie, he's the main character. He's always sketching in that battered black book of his, looking out of the windows at the grey West Country sky like he's seeing something the rest of us aren't. I spent the entirety of lunch daydreaming about our future, mostly involving us living in a cottage in Cornwall where he paints and I write poetry, and neither of us ever falls over. Then the bell rang, that sharp, insistent clang that signals the end of freedom and the beginning of double art. The art room is my favorite place in the whole of St. Mary's. It smells like linseed oil, clay, and old tea. It's messy and chaotic, much like my brain. I tuck myself into my usual stool at the back, trying to look busy with my sketchbook. A few minutes later, Ollie walked in. He didn't sit at the front with the cool crowd who spend more time scrolling on their phones than actually painting. He walked straight to the table next to mine. My heart started doing that rhythmic thumping thing again. "Is this stool taken?" he asked. "Only by my invisible friend. But she can move," I said. "Stop it, Poppy, stop being weird." He laughed again. He actually seems to like my weirdness, which is a massive relief because I don't really have a normal setting. He sat down and opened his sketchbook. I tried not to peek. I really did, but I'm only human. It wasn't a landscape or a bowl of fruit. It was a sketch of the corridor from this morning. And there, in the middle of the page, was a girl with messy hair and a pile of pens. It was me, well, a much prettier, more artistic version of me. "Is that," I started, my voice failing me. Ollie looked a bit sheepish, a faint smudge of charcoal on his cheek. "Oh yeah, sorry. I like the composition. The way the light was hitting the floor when you were investigating the gravity, it was a nice moment." A nice moment. I was sprawled on the floor like a dropped lasagne, and he thought it was a nice moment. "You made me look much less like a fallen toddler." I managed to say thanks, I think. "You don't look like a toddler, Poppy," he said, and he looked me right in the eyes. His eyes are this sort of mossy green color, like the woods after it's been raining. "I think you're actually quite brilliant. You're the only person in this school who doesn't seem like they're pretending to be someone else." I felt a heat creep up my neck that had nothing to do with the radiator behind me. I didn't know what to say for once. My motor mouth had completely stalled. So, I did the only thing I could. I picked up a paintbrush, dipped it in the brightest yellow I could find, and painted a huge, messy sun in the corner of my page. "I'm definitely not pretending," I said softly. "I'm far too clumsy to maintain a secret identity." He smiled, a proper, slow smile that made me feel like the sun I'd just painted was actually shining inside my chest. We spent the rest of the lesson in this comfortable silence, just the scratch of charcoal and the soft thud of brushes. It was peaceful. It was sweet. When the final bell rang, the whole school erupted into that frantic end-of-day energy. Everyone was rushing to catch buses or get to football practice. I was lingering, taking my time to pack away my paints, mostly because I didn't want the moment to end. Poppy, Ollie was standing by the door, his bag slung over one shoulder. "Yeah, it's pouring down out there. Proper steroids. Have you got an umbrella?" I looked out the window. He wasn't joking. The sky had turned a heavy, bruised purple, and rain was lashing against the glass. I looked at my bag. I had a half-eaten bag of crisps, 3 library books, and a very small, very broken umbrella that usually flips inside out if someone so much as sneezes near it. "I have an umbrella-shaped object," I admitted. "But it's more of a suggestion than a functional tool." Ollie pulled a large, sturdy black umbrella from his bag. "I'm walking towards the bus station. Do you want to share? I mean, if you're going that way." "I live in the opposite direction. I live 20 minutes away in a little cul-de-sac that requires 0 interaction with the bus station." "I love the bus station," I chirped, far too loudly. "I mean, yeah. That would be great, thanks, Ollie." Walking under an umbrella, with your crush is a very specific type of torture and heaven combined. We had to stand quite close so we wouldn't get soaked. I could smell his hoodie. It smelled like laundry detergent and wood smoke. Every time our shoulders bumped, I felt a little jolt of electricity. The rain was drumming on the fabric above us, creating this little private world. The rest of the town was a blur of grey puddles and yellow headlights, but inside the umbrella bubble, everything felt warm and bright. "So," Ollie said, dodging a particularly large puddle, "Daisy told me you're planning on going to Bristol for uni next year." "Daisy has a very big mouth," I muttered, though I wasn't really annoyed. "But yeah, I want to do English literature. I want to read books and drink too much coffee and live in a flat with creaky floorboards. What about you?" "Fine arts, somewhere with big windows," he said. He paused, looking at the rain. "Maybe Bristol too. I hear the light there is good for painting." My heart did that little skip jump again. "Maybe Bristol too. That would be cool," I said, trying to sound casual and failing miserably. "We could be starving artists together. I'll write the poems, you do the illustrations, and we can live on tinned beans." "Sounds like a plan." Poppy Higgins. We reached the bus station, which was crowded with damp students and grumpy commuters. The moment was ending. He stopped and looked at me, the umbrella still held over both of us. "This is your stop, right?" he asked. "Actually," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I live back that way. I really wanted to walk with you." I waited for him to think I was a total stalker. I waited for the awkwardness. But instead, Ollie just laughed. That lovely rumbly sound again. "I know," he said. I blinked. "You know, Poppy, you've been living in that cul-de-sac since primary school. My nan lives 3 doors down from you. I've seen you falling off your bike at least a dozen times over the years." I froze. You've seen that. The time you tried to cycle through the sprinkler and ended up in the hedge was my personal favorite," he teased, his eyes dancing with mischief. "I've been trying to find an excuse to talk to you for ages, but you're always surrounded by people or, falling over." I felt like I was floating, not because I'd tripped, but because the world had suddenly shifted into a higher gear. "So you don't think I'm a total disaster?" I asked, looking up at him through my fringe. Ollie reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. His hand stayed there for a second, warm against my skin. "I think you're my favorite kind of disaster," he whispered. The bus pulled in, hissing, as it opened its doors, but neither of us moved. The rain kept falling, the sky kept darkening, but everything felt incredibly sweet. Like the taste of those strawberry laces we used to buy at the corner shop, like the first day of the summer holidays. "I should probably go," he said, though he didn't look like he wanted to. "Yeah, me too. I have a date with a very damp walk home." "Wait." Ollie reached into his bag and pulled out a small piece of paper. He'd torn it from his sketchbook. He pressed it into my hand. "In case you need a laugh on the way back." He hopped onto the bus, waving from the window as it pulled away into the gloom. I stood there, getting wet now that the umbrella was gone, and unfolded the paper. It was a drawing of a tiny, cartoon version of me, wearing a cape and a superhero mask. Underneath, he'd written, "Poppy Higgins, Defier of Gravity, text me," followed by his number. I didn't even care that my shoes were squelching or that my hair was starting to frizz like a dandelion. I danced all the way home, literally danced. I probably looked like a maniac to the people driving past, but I didn't care. When I got in, my mum looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Poppy, you're soaked. Why are you grinning like you've won the lottery?" "Better than the lottery, Mum," I said, heading straight for the stairs. "Way better." I sat on my bed, my damp clothes leaving patches on the duvet, and stared at that little drawing. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling just a little bit. To Ollie Finch. Message: the Defier of Gravity has reached base camp safely. Only tripped twice on the way back. It's a new record. A second later, my phone buzzed. From Ollie Finch. Message: impressive. I'm proud of you. Pizza on Friday. I promise to catch you if you fall. I flopped back onto my pillows, clutching the phone to my chest. High school is weird, isn't it? It's stressful and loud and confusing, and half the time you feel like you're failing at everything. But then there are these moments, these tiny, golden stretches of time where everything just clicks. I looked out at the rain-streaked window, thinking about the art room, the smell of linseed oil, and the way Ollie's eyes crinkled when he laughed. Maybe these years aren't just something to survive. Maybe they're the best bit. I checked my phone one more time. To Ollie Finch. Message: it's a date. But I'm choosing the toppings, no pineapple allowed. From Ollie Finch. Message: deal, see you tomorrow, Poppy. Tomorrow I couldn't wait. Even if I fell down every single flight of stairs in the building, I knew it was going to be a brilliant day. Because youth is messy, and it's clumsy, and it's full of bruised knees and embarrassing stories, but when you've got someone to catch you, it's also the sweetest thing in the world. I closed my eyes, a silly smile plastered on my face, listening to the rain and feeling like the luckiest girl in the whole of Somerset. Honestly, gravity isn't so bad when you're falling for the right person. I spent the next hour on the phone with Daisy. Of course, I had to recount every single syllable of our conversation. And then he said, "Favorite kind of disaster, days." Those were his actual words. I told you. Daisy's voice was triumphant over the line. I told you he was pining. You owe me a pack of those fancy biscuits from the bakery, Poppy Higgins. I'm the one who did all the legwork. I'll buy you the whole bakery. I laughed. We stayed on the line for ages, talking about everything and nothing, the way only best friends can. We talked about our future, about Bristol, about how we were definitely going to be cool adults one day, even if we were currently struggling to navigate a rainy afternoon. As I finally hung up and started on my English homework, I couldn't help but look at my lucky strawberry eraser sitting on the desk. It wasn't just an eraser anymore, it was a souvenir. Life is funny like that. One minute you're face down on the floor of C Block, and the next, the world is glowing. I reckon that's the secret of being 17. Everything matters so much, and every little thing is a miracle if you look at it the right way. I picked up my pen and started my essay on Wuthering Heights, but I kept doodling little umbrellas in the margins. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about the rain. I was looking forward to it. After all, the years we spend together, these fleeting, chaotic, beautiful years, they're the ones that stay with us. They're the years that turn into stories. And I have a feeling that my story with Ollie Finch is only just beginning. And if I do fall, well, I know exactly who's going to be there to help me pick up my pens. I leaned back, looking at the glow of the street lights outside. Yeah, being a disaster is actually all right, especially when you're a disaster in love. The night felt quiet and full of promise. I tucked the little sketch from Ollie into the frame of my mirror so it's the first thing I see in the morning. A reminder that sometimes the most embarrassing moments lead to the most beautiful ones. I fell asleep that night dreaming of green eyes and charcoal sketches, feeling like the world was exactly where it was supposed to be. Sweet, bright, and just a little bit wobbly, just like me. The next morning, the Somerset sun decided to make a rare, apologetic appearance, poking its head through the grey clouds, as if to say sorry for the absolute deluge it had put me through the day before. I woke up before my alarm, which, let's be honest, is a literal miracle, and the first thing I saw was that little charcoal sketch tucked into my mirror frame. My heart did a weirdly graceful somersault. Usually, my heart is as clumsy as my feet, but this morning it felt like a professional gymnast. I spent an embarrassing amount of time picking out an outfit. It's year 12, so we don't have to wear the full uniform anymore, just professional dress, which is basically a fancy way of saying try not to look like you just rolled out of a skip. I settled on my favorite forest green jumper, the one Daisy says makes my eyes look less like muddy puddles and more like actual emeralds, and my lucky silver locket. Poppy, you're going to miss the bus. My mum yelled from downstairs. Coming, I shouted back, grabbing my bag and nearly tripping over my own rug. Some things never change. The bus journey was the usual chaotic blend of damp blazers and the smell of cheap body spray, but I didn't even mind the screeching Year 7 South at the back. I sat by the window, watching the hedgerows blur past, feeling like I was in one of those indie coming-of-age films. You know, the ones where the protagonist has a secret and the soundtrack is all acoustic guitars and longing. That was me, Poppy Higgins, girl with a pizza date. Daisy was waiting for me by the bike sheds, her bright yellow raincoat making her look like a very stylish lemon. The second she saw me, she let out a squeal that definitely made a nearby pigeon reconsider its life choices. Look at you, you're glowing. Is that the I have a date with Ollie Finch glow, or did you actually use that expensive highlighter I bought you? She teased, hooking her arm through mine as we trekked toward the sixth form common room. A bit of both, I giggled, leaning my head on her shoulder for a second. Honestly, Days, I feel like I'm walking on air. Which is dangerous, considering my track record with gravity. I'm half expecting to spontaneously combust before Friday. Don't you dare, she warned, steering me around a particularly treacherous puddle in the quad. You have to survive. We've spent 3 years decoding his smiles and analyzing the way he says hello. We are in the endgame now, Poppy. This is our Avengers endgame. We spent the whole of registration whispering. Well, I whispered, and Daisy occasionally barked out a laugh that made Mr. Henderson look up from his register with a deeply pained expression. I told her about the text messages, the way he'd called me a favorite kind of disaster, and how he'd actually promised to catch me if I fell. It's like a romance novel, but with more bruised shins, Daisy whispered, scribbling Mrs. Ollie Finch on a scrap of paper just to annoy me. I swiped it away, blushing furiously. The morning was a blur of sociology and double maths. Usually, I'm quite good at focusing, mostly because if I don't, I get hopelessly lost, but today, the numbers on the board kept rearranging themselves into the shape of Ollie's messy fringe. I kept checking the clock. 10:30, 11:15, 12 o'clock. Lunchtime finally rolled around, and my stomach was doing that nervous fluttery thing again. The common room was packed, the air thick with the smell of toasted sandwiches and the sound of 100 different conversations. I scanned the room, my heart hammering against my ribs. And then, I saw him. Ollie was sitting on one of the battered leather sofas near the window, a sketchbook open on his lap. He was wearing a navy hoodie that made him look unfairly handsome, and he was chewing the end of a pencil, deep in thought. He looked up just as I walked in, and the second our eyes met, he grinned. Not just a polite "oh, hi" grin, but a proper, wide, I've been waiting to see you grin. Go on then, Daisy nudged me, nearly knocking me into a Year 13's coffee. Go say hello, I'll be at the toasty machine, being a legend and giving you space. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my jumper, and navigated the obstacle course of discarded bags and legs. Morning, Defier of Gravity, Ollie said as I approached. He shifted his bag to make room for me on the sofa. Morning, I replied, feeling that familiar warmth creep up my neck. I'm happy to report no casualties so far today. I even managed the stairs in the science block without a single wobble. Ollie laughed, That low, rumbly sound that I'm fairly sure could cure most diseases. I'm impressed, though I have to admit, I was prepared to deploy a search and rescue team if you hadn't shown up by lunch. He closed his sketchbook, but not before I caught a glimpse of a drawing. It wasn't a landscape or a still life. It looked like a girl with messy hair and a lopsided smile. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't dare ask if it was me. So, he said, leaning in a little closer. The common room was loud, but in this tiny pocket of space, it felt like it was just us. Friday, I've been thinking about the toppings. If pineapple is strictly forbidden, where do you stand on sweet corn? I pulled a face. Sweet corn on pizza is a crime against humanity. Ollie, it's a vegetable that belongs in a salad or a tin, not on melted mozzarella. Aha, a woman of strong convictions. I like it, he teased, his eyes dancing with mischief. What about spicy beef, or are we going classic margarita? Spicy beef is acceptable, but only if there's extra cheese. Life is too short for a sensible amount of cheese. Noted, extra cheese for the lady who lives on the edge, he said, and for a second, he reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. His fingers just grazed my skin, and I felt a literal spark. I'm not even joking, it was like a tiny bolt of lightning. I forgot how to breathe for a second. I really did. I just sat there, looking into those green eyes, feeling like the luckiest girl in the whole of Somerset. It's funny, isn't it? We spend so much time worrying about the big stuff, exams, the future, whether we'll ever move out of our parents' houses, but in the end, it's these little moments that actually matter. A touch, a laugh, a debate about pizza toppings. Poppy, he asked softly, his hand lingering near my face. Yeah, I breathed. You've got a bit of, well, it looks like blue ink on your cheek. I immediately went bright red and started scrubbing at my face. Of course I do, of course. I probably leaned on my hand during maths. This is my life, Ollie. This is the Poppy Higgins experience. It's 10% charisma and 90% accidental self-sabotage. He laughed, but it was the sweetest sound. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a clean tissue, and gently dabbed at my cheek. Hold still, you're making it worse, you're just smearing it now. I held perfectly still, my heart thumping so hard I was worried he could hear it. He was so close I could smell his cologne, something woody and fresh, like rain on pine trees. It was the most intimate thing that had ever happened to me, and it was happening in the middle of a noisy school common room while Daisy watched from the toasty machine with a thumbs up. There, he said, pulling back and inspecting his handiwork. All gone back to being a masterpiece. A masterpiece, he called me a masterpiece. I think I might have actually melted into the sofa at that point. Thanks, I managed to squeak out. I'll try to keep the ink on the paper for the rest of the day. No promises, eh? He winked at me, then checked his watch. I've got art now. Mr. Harrison is a stickler for punctuality, and I'm already 5 minutes late, but I'll text you later. Definitely, I said, watching him stand up. He was so tall, so effortless. As he walked away, he turned back one last time, and Poppy, don't fall down any holes on your way to English. I'm not there to catch you yet. I watched him disappear through the double doors, a goofy, permanent smile plastered on my face. I sat there for a good 3 minutes just staring at the space where he'd been. Earth to Poppy, come in, Poppy. Daisy was suddenly there, waving a triangle of cheese-filled bread in front of my face. Tell me everything. Why was he touching your face? Why are you looking like you just won the lottery? And more importantly, did he mention the pizza again? I grabbed her hand and pulled her down onto the sofa. Days, he wiped ink off my face. He called me a masterpiece. And he's going to text me later. Daisy gasped, nearly dropping her toasty. A masterpiece. Oh my God, Poppy, that's it. I'm picking out my bridesmaid dress. I'm thinking a nice lilac, it suits my complexion. Don't be mental, I laughed, though secretly, I was already imagining what my last name would sound like with Finch tacked onto the end. Poppy Finch, it had a nice ring to it, didn't it? Very bird-like, very whimsical. The rest of the school day felt like I was floating. Even when I accidentally walked into a closed door because I was too busy looking at my phone, I didn't care. I just picked up my bag, apologized to the door, and kept going. That's the thing about being this happy, the world feels softer, the sharp edges don't hurt as much. When I got home that afternoon, the house was quiet. I went straight to my room, threw my bag on the floor, and flopped onto my bed. I pulled out my phone and saw a notification waiting for me. From Ollie Finch. Message: made it to art. Mr. Harrison gave me a lecture on the sanctity of the bell, but I was too busy thinking about spicy beef and extra cheese to care. Hope your afternoon was ink-free. I rolled onto my back, kicking my legs in the air like a toddler. He was thinking about our date. He was thinking about me. To Ollie Finch. Message: entirely ink-free. I did walk into a door, though. The door is fine, but my dignity is currently in intensive care. Only 48 hours until pizza. Not that I'm counting or anything. From Ollie Finch. Message: 47 hours and 52 minutes, actually. But who's keeping track? See you tomorrow, masterpiece. I clutched the phone to my chest, letting out a long, happy sigh. High school is such a weird, wonderful, terrifying place. One day you're crying in the rain because you've tripped over your own feet, and the next, you're texting the boy of your dreams and feeling like the queen of the world. I looked over at my desk, at the pile of homework I really needed to do, and the lucky strawberry eraser. I realized then that being clumsy or a disaster wasn't a curse. It was just part of the story. If I hadn't fallen in the rain, if I hadn't dropped my pens, if I hadn't been exactly who I am, flaws and all, I wouldn't be sitting here right now, waiting for Friday. I picked up my pen and, instead of starting my history essay, I wrote one single sentence at the top of a fresh page. Sometimes, the best things happen when you lose your balance. I spent the evening in a sort of blissful haze. Even my brother, who usually exists solely to annoy me, couldn't ruin my mood. "Why are you humming?" he asked, poking his head into my room while I was trying to decide which shoes were pizza date appropriate. "It's creepy. You sound like a haunted doll." "I'm happy, Toby. It's a concept you might want to look into," I retorted, throwing a cushion at him. "Is it that art boy, the one with the hair? His name is Ollie, and maybe..." Toby rolled his eyes. "Gross. Well, tell Ollie with the hair that if he breaks your heart, I'll have to do something brotherly and threatening, like hide his sketchbooks. Or tell him you still sleep with that teddy bear that's missing an eye." "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," he grinned, ducking out of the room just as I threw a second cushion. I sat back on my bed, laughing. Even my brother's weird threats felt like part of the magic. Everything felt connected, like a big, beautiful web of moments leading up to something spectacular. I looked out at the Somerset stars, feeling small but significant. Tomorrow was Thursday, then Friday. And then the world would change, or maybe it wouldn't. Maybe it would stay exactly the same, but I'd be seeing it through a different lens. Either way, I was ready. I wasn't afraid of the rain, or the stairs, or the ink stains. Because for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Falling, yes, but falling for the right person. And that, I decided, was the best kind of gravity there is. I turned off my lamp, the glow of the streetlights casting soft shadows across my room. I closed my eyes, the word masterpiece echoing in my head like a lullaby. Tomorrow would be brilliant. Friday would be even better. Being 17 is a mess. It's a beautiful, chaotic, heart-stopping mess. And I wouldn't trade a single second of it. Not even the falls, especially not the falls. As I drifted off to sleep, I had one final thought. I hope he likes extra pepperoni too. The next morning, the air was crisp, smelling of damp earth and wood smoke. I practically skipped to the bus stop. I was wearing my favorite scarf, the one that smelled like my mum's laundry detergent, and I felt invincible. Daisy was already there, looking uncharacteristically serious. "Poppy," she said, grabbing my shoulders the second I arrived, "we have a crisis." My heart plummeted. What, is Ollie okay? Did he cancel? Is the pizza place on fire? No, she said, waving her hand dismissively. Worse, I just realized I don't have anything to wear for when I inevitably have to spy on your date from the bushes. I burst out laughing, the tension leaving my body in a rush. Daisy, you are not spying on us. I will literally ban you from the bakery for life. Fine, she pouted. But you have to promise a full debrief every single detail. If he holds your hand, I want to know the exact temperature of his palm. If he shares his crusts, I want to know the percentage of crust shared. I promise. I laughed as the bus pulled up. We climbed on, and as we headed toward school, I looked out at the rolling hills and the grey stone walls of the village. It was just a normal Thursday in Somerset. But to me, it felt like the beginning of everything. The bus hummed, the students chatted, and somewhere in the distance, a boy named Ollie Finch was probably drawing something beautiful. And maybe, just maybe, he was thinking of me too. Life is funny. One day you're just a girl who falls down in the rain, and the next, you're the lead character in a story you never thought you'd get to tell. I clutched my bag, feeling the weight of my lucky eraser and the sketch in my pocket. Yeah, being a disaster is definitely all right. Especially when you're a disaster who's finally found their feet even if they're still a bit wobbly. I looked at Daisy, who was currently trying to explain the plot of a reality show to a very confused Year 8, and I smiled. Youth is messy, it's loud, it's confusing. But oh, it's so sweet. The bus pulled into the gravel drive of St. Jude's, its brakes letting out a long, dramatic hiss that matched the sigh of relief I felt inside. We were here, Thursday. The penultimate day before the big event. I stepped off the bus, nearly catching my scarf in the folding doors because, of course, the universe wouldn't let me have a single day of total grace, but I managed to disentangle myself with only a minor stumble. Right, Daisy said, adjusting her backpack straps with the kind of intensity usually reserved for Olympic athletes. Operation Friday Prep is officially in session. Phase 1, the casual walk-by. We need to locate Ollie, gauge the vibe, and ensure he hasn't been kidnapped by a rival art school or, worse, developed a sudden interest in someone who doesn't trip over their own shadow. Daisy, stop it, I hissed, though I was giggling. He's not going to be kidnapped, and it's only 8:45 a.m. He's probably in the 6th form block trying to wake up with a lukewarm tea, just like everyone else. We navigated the swarm of younger years, dodging a rogue football in the quad and weaving through the smell of damp coats and floor wax that always defined our school corridors. When we reached the common room, my heart did that weird little skip-hop thing again. There he was. Ollie Finch was leaning against the radiator by the window, a sketch pad propped on his knee. The morning light was hitting his messy hair in a way that felt entirely unfair to the rest of the male population of Somerset. He looked up, and for a second, I considered turning around and sprinting back to the bus. But then he smiled that slow, lopsided grin that made me feel like I'd just downed 3 mugs of extra strong coffee. Morning, Poppy, he called out, his voice cutting through the morning chatter. "Morning," I replied, perhaps a bit too loudly. I felt Daisy nudge me in the ribs with her elbow, a silently cool command that I was definitely failing to follow. I walked over, trying to make my legs move in a way that looked human and not like a newborn giraffe. "You're in early, working on something new." He tilted the sketch pad so I could see it wasn't a landscape or a portrait this time. It was a series of quick, charcoal gestures, the way people looked while they were waiting for the kettle to boil, or the slumped shoulders of someone scrolling through their phone. "Just capturing the morning grumpiness," he chuckled. "Everyone looks so tragic before the first bell. It's great for practice." "I hope I'm not in there," I joked, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. I usually look like a startled owl until at least break time. Ollie laughed, and the sound was like my favorite song. "Nah, you're definitely not a startled owl. You're more like sunshine in a woolly jumper. Very difficult to draw with charcoal, to be honest, needs more yellow." "Sunshine," he called me sunshine. I felt my face heating up to the temperature of a toaster. Daisy, who had been hovering a respectful or not so respectful 3 feet away, suddenly piped up. "Yellow is definitely her color. Anyway, Ollie, we were just discussing the logistics of tomorrow. Poppy is very excited about the pepperoni. She's been talking about it since yesterday, non-stop. Truly, I've had to put on noise-canceling headphones. I wanted to melt into the floorboards of Daisy." Ollie just grinned, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Pepperoni is a serious business. I've already checked the menu online. They do a stuffed crust that's supposed to be life-changing." "Life-changing pizza. I like the sound of that," I said, finally finding my voice. The bell rang, a shrill, metallic sound that signaled the end of our little bubble. Ollie stood up, sliding his charcoal into his bag. "See you in English. We're supposed to be starting the Romantic Poets today." "Very fitting," he said, giving me a cheeky wink before heading off toward the languages wing. I stood there, frozen, until Daisy started waving a hand in front of my face. "Poppy, earth to Poppy, you've gone all glassy-eyed. Did you hear that? Very fitting. He's basically saying he's a romantic. He's basically saying you're his muse. I need to write this down in the official log." "There is no official log," I laughed, finally moving towards my first lesson. "But honestly, Daisy, did that really just happen? Did he call me sunshine?" "He did, and he winked, a proper, non-creepy, actually charming wink." I give it a 10 out of 10. The Somerset scores are in, and Ollie Finch is leading the league. The rest of the morning was a blur of French verbs and chemical equations, none of which stayed in my brain for more than 5 seconds. Every time I looked at the clock, I felt a mix of hurry up and please slow down so I can prepare my heart. At lunchtime, we sat on our usual bench behind the sports hall. It was a bit chilly, but we liked it because it was quiet. I was picking at a ham sandwich when Toby appeared, looking unusually smug. "Saw your boyfriend in the hall," he said, plopping down next to us and stealing a crisp from Daisy's bag. "He's not my boyfriend, Toby. We're just going for pizza," I said, though the word boyfriend made a little firework go off in my chest. Whatever, he was wearing a shirt with a paint stain on the collar. Very tortured artist. I told him I liked his shoes. I stared at him. "You talk to him." "Toby, what did you say? Tell me exactly." "Relax, Pops, I just said, nice Vans, mate," and he said thanks. Then I told him that if he got tomato sauce on your jumper tomorrow, he'd have to answer to me. You know, the usual brotherly protection. I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "You didn't. Please tell me you're joking." "I might be, or I might not be. That's the mystery of Toby," he said, standing up and dodging a playful kick from Daisy. "Anyway, he seems all right." For a guy who draws trees for fun, see you at home. He's going to ruin my life, I whispered to Daisy. No, he's not, Daisy reassured me, patting my arm. It makes you look like you have a scary, protective family. It adds to your mystique. Every heroine needs a bit of drama in the background. I don't want mystique. I just want to be able to eat pizza without my brother threatening the person I'm with. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower, casting long, golden shadows across the school fields, the Thursday feeling really took hold. It's that specific brand of anticipation the day before the day. The world felt pregnant with possibility. Even the boring stuff, like my history essay on the Industrial Revolution, felt somehow lighter. I spent my final period in the library, supposedly researching spinning jennies, but actually doodling little O's and P's in the margin of my notebook. I felt like I was in one of those coming-of-age films, the ones where the music swells and everything is filmed with a soft focus lens. When the final bell rang at 3:30, I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated joy. One more day, Daisy said as we walked to the bus. Just one more sleep. Poppy, how are the nerves? Surprisingly okay, I said, and I meant it. I mean, I'm terrified I'll choke on a crust or say something incredibly stupid, but mostly, I'm just happy. Is that allowed? Can 17-year-olds just be happy without a but? In this instance, yes, Daisy nodded firmly. You've done the falling, you've done the ink stains. You've done the awkward staring from afar. You've paid your dues to the gods of teenage awkwardness. Tomorrow is your reward. I looked out of the bus window as we drove through the winding lanes of our village. The trees were almost bare now, their skeletal branches reaching up towards a violet sky. It was beautiful. Everything was beautiful. When I got home, the house smelled of roast chicken. Mum was in the kitchen, humming along to the radio. Have a good day, love, she asked, not looking up from the carrots she was peeling. Yeah, I said, dropping my bag by the door. A really good day. Toby mentioned something about a pizza date tomorrow. She turned around, a teasing glint in her eyes. Ollie, was it? The boy from the art block. Toby has a big mouth, I muttered, but I couldn't help smiling. Yes, Ollie, he's really nice. Mum, he sees things, you know. Like, he notices the way light hits a radiator, or the way people look when they're tired. He's special. Mum softened, coming over to give my shoulder a squeeze. He sounds lovely. Poppy, just be yourself. And maybe wear your hair down. You have such lovely curls. Thanks, Mum. That night, I didn't struggle to sleep. I felt tucked in by my own excitement. I dreamt of charcoal sketches that came to life, of pizzas as big as tractor wheels, and of a boy with a lopsided grin who thought I was sunshine. When I woke up on Friday morning, the first thing I saw was a text on my phone. Ollie, happy Friday, sunshine. Don't forget 6 p.m. at Mario's. I've been practicing my pizza eating technique all morning. It's a very technical process. I hugged my phone to my chest, let out a tiny, muffled scream of delight into my pillow, and kicked my legs under the duvet. This was it, the Friday I'd been waiting for since I first saw him through that rain-streaked window. I got out of bed, skipped to the bathroom, and didn't even mind when I accidentally knocked my toothbrush into the bin. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the fact that today was the day the masterpiece really began. I chose my outfit with the precision of a diamond cutter. A soft, cream-colored jumper to highlight the sunshine vibe, my favorite dark jeans, and my boots, the ones with the good grip, because I was taking no chances with the Somerset pavement. I spent 20 minutes on my hair, trying to get the curls to look effortlessly messy rather than just survived a gale. Daisy sent me a flurry of messages throughout the morning. 8:02 a.m., you got this. 9:15 a.m., remember, chew, swallow, speak, in that order. 11:30 a.m., If he looks at your eyes for more than 3 seconds, it's legally an engagement in some countries. I giggled through my lessons, feeling like I was floating a few inches off the ground. Ollie and I didn't speak much during the day, just a few shared glances and a quick see you later in the hall, but the tension was there, a sweet humming wire connecting us across the crowded classrooms. By 5:30 p.m., I was standing in front of my mirror, taking one last look. My heart was thumping against my ribs like a trapped bird, but it wasn't a bad feeling. It was the feeling of being alive, of being 17, of being on the edge of a great adventure. "You look nice, pups," Toby said, leaning against my doorframe. He wasn't teasing this time, he actually looked almost proud. "Go have fun, and don't worry, I won't follow you." Mostly because there's a gaming tournament on tonight, but also because you deserve a night without your annoying brother. "Thanks, Toby," I said, giving him a quick hug. "Wish me luck." "You don't need luck," he called out as I headed down the stairs. "Just try not to fall into the pizza." I stepped out into the cool evening air. The sun had already set, leaving a bruise-colored sky over the Mendip Hills. The street lamps were flickering to life, casting orange circles on the pavement. I walked towards the village center, my boots clicking rhythmically. Mario's was a small, family-run place tucked between a chemist and a charity shop. It had red and white checked curtains and a neon sign that hummed quietly. As I approached, I saw him. Ollie was already there, standing outside the door. He was wearing a dark jacket over a hoodie, and he looked nervous. He was shifting his weight from foot to foot, checking his watch every 10 seconds. Seeing him nervous made me feel suddenly calm. We were both just two kids in a small town, trying to figure out how to be together. "Hey," I said, stopping a few feet away. He looked up, and his face instantly cleared, replaced by that brilliant, lopsided smile. "Hey, you made it. No rain today, thankfully." "I know," I laughed. "I feel like I've cheated the system by arriving upright." "You look really great, Poppy, seriously." "Thanks, you too, even without the tortured artist paint stains." He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Toby told you about that, did he? Your brother is a character." "He's a nightmare," I corrected gently. "Shall we go in? I'm starving, and I have high expectations for this life-changing crust." "After you," he said, holding the door open. The restaurant was warm and smelled of yeast, melted cheese, and garlic. We were seated at a small table in the corner, tucked away from the main window. A single candle in a wax-covered bottle sat between us, its flame dancing in the slight draft. We ordered a giant pepperoni pizza to share and 2 colas. For the first few minutes, there was that slight, prickly awkwardness of being on a date, but it didn't last. Once we started talking, it was like the floodgates opened. We talked about everything. He told me about his dream of going to art school in London, about how he used to draw on the walls of his bedroom until his parents gave in and bought him a proper easel. I told him about my secret ambition to write a novel, and how I'd once tried to bake a cake for Daisy's birthday that ended up tasting like cardboard. "I'd read it," he said, leaning across the table. "The cake? No, the novel. I bet it would be full of heart. And probably a few characters who trip over things." "Hey," I protested, though I was beaming. "My characters would be very graceful, thank you very much." The pizza arrived, and it was glorious. We both reached for a slice at the same time, our fingers brushing. For a split second. The world seemed to pause. The sound of the Italian music playing over the speakers, the clatter of plates, the chatter of other diners, it all faded into the background. There was just the heat of his skin against mine and the way his eyes were reflecting the candlelight. "Poppy," he said, his voice lower now, "I'm really glad I saw you in the rain that day. I mean, I'm sorry you fell, but..." It was the highlight of my week, watching you just laugh it off. I thought, I need to know that girl. Really, I whispered. I thought you were just wondering why the girl in the yellow raincoat was such a klutz. Not at all, he said, his hand lingering near mine on the table. I thought you were the most interesting thing in the whole village. I felt a lump in my throat, the good kind. The kind that comes when you realize someone sees you exactly as you want to be seen. We finished the pizza. The crust really was life-changing, and spent another hour just talking, losing track of time until the waiter started clearing the nearby tables. When we stepped back outside, the air was colder, but I didn't feel it. Ollie walked me towards the park, the one where we'd sat on the swings just a few days ago. So, he said, as we reached the gate, did the date meet the expectations of the official log? Exceeded them, I said, looking up at him, though Daisy will be disappointed she didn't get to spy on us from a bush. Ollie laughed, then went quiet. He stepped a little closer, the space between us narrowing. I could smell the faint scent of charcoal and something like sandalwood on his jacket. Poppy, yeah, would it be okay if I kissed you? Or is that too much for a first date? My heart wasn't just thumping now. It was doing a full-on drum solo. I think that would be the perfect way to end the Friday. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to back away, but I didn't. I leaned in too. When our lips finally met, it wasn't like the movies. There were no literal fireworks or orchestral swells. It was better than that. It was soft and warm and tasted faintly of cola. It felt like coming home after a long day. It felt like the beginning of a story that I never wanted to end. When we pulled apart, he was smiling, his eyes bright. Wow. Yeah, I breathed. Wow. He took my hand, his fingers lacing through mine. I'll walk you home. We walked through the quiet streets of our Somerset village, two 17-year-olds holding hands under the stars. The world felt big and vast, full of challenges and exams and uncertainties. But right then, in that moment, it felt perfectly contained in the palm of my hand. As we reached my front gates, he turned to me, same time Monday, at the bakery. I think I need a cinnamon bun to recover from all this excitement. It's a date, I said. I watched him walk away, his hands shoved into his pockets, a little spring in his step. I waited until he disappeared around the corner before I practically burst through my front door. Daisy, I yelled into the hallway, forgetting it was nearly 10 p.m. Toby stuck his head out of the living room. She's not here, you muppet. She's been texting me every 5 minutes, asking if you're back. I ignored him, pulling out my phone and typing with trembling fingers. Poppy, Daisy, the crust was good. The talk was better, and the kiss was a masterpiece. I sat on the bottom step of the stairs, still wearing my coat, and just breathed. Youth is a mess, its falls and ink stains, and brothers who tease you, and sisters by choice who spy on you. It's terrifying and loud and confusing. But as I sat there, the taste of the first kiss still lingering on my lips, I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't change a single messy, beautiful second of it. Because when you're 17, and you found the person who makes the rain feel like liquid gold, everything, absolutely everything, is sweet. I didn't sleep, not really. I lay there in the dark, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling that I'd refused to take down since I was 9, and I just hovered. I was floating somewhere between the damp Somerset night outside and the warm, fizzy hum inside my chest. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel the ghost of that kiss. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a shift in the tectonic plates of my entire universe. My phone buzzed on the bedside table, vibrating with such intensity I thought it might dance right off the edge. Daisy, Poppy, I am literally vibrating, a masterpiece. Please tell me you've documented the technical specifications. Was there a tilt? Was there a lingering hand on the cheek? Did he tuck your hair behind your ear? If you don't give me a full debrief, I will be at your window with a megaphone at 6 a.m. I giggled, the sound muffled by my duvet. Poppy, there was a tilt. There was a definite tilt. And it wasn't like those awkward ones in year 9 where someone always ends up with a bruised nose. It was soft, and he smelled like sandalwood. Or maybe wood smoke, whatever it was. I want to live in it. Daisy, sandalwood, he's a poet, he's a romantic hero. He's Mr. Darcy, but with better trainers. Right, we are meeting 30 minutes early on Monday. The bakery is non-negotiable. I need to see the post-kiss glow in person. I set the phone down and sighed. A long, happy breath that felt like it carried all the nerves of the last month out into the room. I was 17. My history essay was only half finished. My room was a tip, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. But Ollie Miller liked me. He liked the girl who fell over in the rain. And somehow, that made everything else feel manageable. The weekend was a blur of domestic normalcy that felt strangely cinematic. I helped Mum in the garden, and instead of complaining about the mud, I found myself thinking about how the Vaughan's were actually quite hard-working little blokes. I even let Toby have the last Jaffa cake. "You're being weird," Toby said, narrowing his eyes at me across the kitchen island on Sunday afternoon. "You've got that look on your face, like you've just won the lottery, but you're trying to be humble about it." "I'm just in a good mood, Toby. It's called being a pleasant human being. You should try it sometime. It's the Miller kid, isn't it?" He smirked, leaning back in his chair. "I saw him walking you home. He looked like he'd just been told he didn't have to take his GCSS. You lot are properly sickening." "Shut up," I said, though there was no bite in it. "And he's not a kid, he's nearly 18. Same difference, just don't let it go to your head. You've still got to do the washing up tonight." Monday morning arrived with a crisp, biting wind that screamed British autumn. I spent 45 minutes trying to decide between my oversized green jumper or the denim jacket. I went with the jumper. It felt more like a hug, and I felt like I needed one to keep my heart from leaping out of my ribcage on the bus. I met Daisy at the corner of the high street. Right outside the rolling pin, she was already there, bouncing on the balls of her feet, a bright pink scarf wrapped 3 times around her neck. "There she is," she squealed, grabbing my arms and shaking me gently. "Look at you, you're literally sparkling. Is that a new highlighter or just the power of young love?" "It's the wind, Daisy. My face is literally frozen," I joked, though I couldn't stop grinning. "Rubbish, it's the glow. Come on, we have 10 minutes before the cinnamon buns are out of the oven, and I need the play-by-play. From the moment the pizza arrived to the moment you entered your house. Go." We huddled in our usual corner booth, the one with the slightly torn vinyl seat that we'd claimed as ours since year 11. I told her everything, the way he'd looked at me in the candlelight, the conversation about his dreams of traveling, the way he'd admitted he was nervous too. He said he was nervous. Daisy clapped her hands together. "That's the clincher. Boys like Ollie usually act like they've got it all figured out. If he's showing you the wobbles, Poppy, he's proper gone for you. You think, I know now, the kiss. Scale of 1 to 10, and be honest, was their tongue? Don't make a face, I need to know for the archives." "Daisy," I hissed, looking around to make sure the lady at the counter wasn't listening. It was a solid 10, and no, it was just perfect. It felt like the end of a movie where you know there's going to be a sequel. "A sequel," Daisy whispered, her eyes wide. "I love sequels. Especially the ones with higher budgets and more locations." Just then, the bell above the door chimed. My heart did a literal somersault. I didn't even have to look up to know it was him. I could feel him. It was like a magnetic pull, a sudden change in the air pressure of the bakery. Ollie walked in, looking slightly windswept, his school bag slung over one shoulder. He saw me and his whole face transformed. That lopsided grin, the one that made his eyes crinkle at the corners, was aimed directly at my seat. "Morning," he said, stepping over. He didn't just wave. He walked right up to the table and rested a hand on the back of my chair. "Hey, Daisy, Poppy." "Morning, Ollie," Daisy said, her voice an octave higher than usual. She gave me a look that clearly said, "I am behaving. Look at how well I am behaving." "Did you get any sleep?" Ollie asked me, his voice dropping into that lower, private register that made my toes curl in my trainers. "A bit," I lied. "You?" "Not a wink," he admitted, his thumb grazing the sleeve of my jumper. I kept thinking about the pizza and, other things. Daisy let out a small, muffled squeak into her napkin. "We should probably get to college," I said, my face definitely matching Daisy's pink scarf now. "Don't want to be late for English. Mr. Henderson is on a tear about Keats today." "Right, Keats, very important," Ollie said, though he didn't move. He just looked at me for a beat longer than was strictly necessary for a casual morning greeting. "I'll walk with you." The walk to the sixth form block felt different today. Usually, it was a slug-dodging Year 7 South who were twice as loud as they were tall, navigating the puddles in the car park, and bracing for the smell of the damp gym. But today, with Ollie walking beside me, his hand occasionally brushing against mine, it felt like a victory lap. We weren't officially holding hands yet. That felt like a big public statement for a Monday morning in a small village, but the proximity was enough. Every time our knuckles grazed, a little spark of electricity shot up my arm. "So," Ollie said as we reached the double doors of the main building, "lunch at the secret bench." The secret bench wasn't actually secret. It was just a slightly dilapidated wooden seat behind the music block that nobody used because it was perpetually in the shade, but we'd made it ours. "I'll be there," I promised. "I might even share my crisps with you." "Big commitment," he teased. "See you then, Poppy." He headed off towards the maths wing, and I stood there for a second, just watching him. "Earth to Poppy," Daisy said, poking me in the ribs. "We have literature. We have to discuss the Eve of St. Agnes, which, frankly, is going to be a lot more interesting now that you're living your own romantic poem." The morning was a test of endurance. I sat in Mr. Henderson's class, staring at the lines of poetry, but the words just floated off the page. "The owl, for all his feathers, was a cold." I wrote Ollie in the margin of my notebook, then immediately scribbled over it in a panic, hoping Daisy hadn't seen. She had, of course. She just winked at me. By the time the lunch bell rang, I was a jittery mess. I grabbed my bag and headed for the music block, my heart hammering a rhythm that was definitely not Keats approved. He was already there. He was sitting on the bench, his long legs stretched out, tossing a small pebble into the grass. When he saw me, he stood up. "Hey," he said. "Hey." There was a moment of awkwardness. The "what do we do now that we're not in a candlelit restaurant" moment. It lasted about 3 seconds before Ollie stepped forward and took both of my hands in his. "I was worried," he said softly. "About what?" "That maybe the Friday night was just, I don't know, a fluke. That you'd wake up on Monday and think, actually, that guy with the charcoal fingers is a bit of a loser." I laughed, a bright, genuine sound. "Ollie Miller, I have been documenting your existence in my official log for weeks. There is no way I'm letting you off the hook that easily." "The official log?" He raised an eyebrow. "I'm intrigued. Am I a hero or a villain in this log?" "Mostly a mystery," I said, stepping a bit closer. "But the latest entry is very positive, highly recommended by critics." He smiled, and then, right there in the shadow of the music block, with the faint sound of a grade 3 flute scales drifting through the window above us. He leaned down and kissed me again. It wasn't a first kiss anymore. It was a "this is us" kiss. It was certain. It was sweet. It was everything I hadn't known I was looking for when I stepped out into the rain that day. "Poppy," a voice boomed from across the quad. We sprang apart like we'd been caught bank robbing. It was Leo, one of Ollie's friends, waving a football at us. "Miller, we need a keeper. Stop snogging and get over here." Ollie turned bright red, but he didn't let go of my hand. He looked at me, an apologetic grin on his face. "Duty calls." "Go," I laughed, giving his hand a squeeze. "I have to find Daisy anyway. I think she's going into withdrawal from lack of updates." "Tonight?" he asked. "I'll call you." "Definitely." I watched him run off towards the field, shouting back a mock insult at Leo. I sat down on the bench, the cold wood pressing through my jeans, and I just felt full. Being 17 is so often about waiting. Waiting for the weekend, waiting for exams to be over, waiting for real life to start. But as I sat there, listening to the chaotic symphony of a Monday lunchtime, I realized that this was the real life. The nerves, the ink-stained margins, the cold benches, and the boys who smell like wood smoke. I pulled out my phone. "Poppy, update for the log. The sequel is definitely better than the original." I looked up at the grey Somerset sky. It looked like it might rain again. I hoped it did. I had a yellow raincoat, a heart full of something that felt suspiciously like magic, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of a little bit of mud. Because when you have someone to laugh with when you fall, the ground doesn't seem so far away after all. I stood up, slung my bag over my shoulder, and headed back towards the main building. I had an afternoon of Tudor history ahead of me, but I didn't mind. Henry VIII and his 6 wives had nothing on the drama of year 13, and besides, I had a cinnamon bun date to look forward to on Monday. Wait, it was Monday. I smiled to myself. Every day was starting to feel like a date. And that, I decided, was a very good way to live. As I walked through the corridors, I saw my reflection in the glass of the trophy cabinet. I didn't look different. My hair was still a bit frizzy from the wind, and I still had a smudge of pen on my thumb. But my eyes, they looked like they knew a secret. A wonderful, sandalwood-scented secret. I caught sight of Daisy by the lockers, her face lighting up the moment she saw me. I didn't even have to say a word, she just knew. "Masterpiece," she mouthed, grinning. "Masterpiece," I mouthed back. And as the bell rang for period 5, I knew that whatever happened next, whatever exams, whatever moves to university, whatever life threw at us this moment, this feeling was ours. We were 17, we were messy, and we were absolutely, perfectly, gloriously happy. The bell for period 5 didn't just ring. It seemed to chime, a melodic punctuation mark at the end of the most ridiculous, heart-thumping lunchtime of my entire existence. I floated towards the history block, my boots barely touching the scuffed lino of the corridors. Behind me, I could hear the rhythmic thud of a football and Leo's raucous laughter, but all I could actually feel was the lingering warmth of Ollie's hand against mine and the faint, dizzying scent of sandalwood that seemed to have settled into the very fibers of my school jumper. I slipped into my seat at the back of Mr. Henderson's classroom just as the heavy oak door creaked shut. Daisy was already there, her eyes wider than I'd ever seen them, her pen poised over a notebook like she was ready to transcribe a royal decree. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The way I sat down, a bit too quickly, with a grin that I physically couldn't pull back from my face, told her everything. "Page 74, Mr. Henderson announced, his voice dry as the parchment he studied. "The dissolution of the monasteries, a turning point in the English Reformation." I opened my textbook. but the words Thomas Cromwell and ecclesiastical blurred into a hazy smudge. I grabbed a scrap of paper from the back of my planner, the official log, as it were, and scribbled 3 words under the table. It happened again. I slid the note across to Daisy. She read it, let out a tiny, high-pitched squeak that sounded suspiciously like a stifled sneeze, and immediately began scribbling back. Her handwriting was a chaotic scrawl of excitement. Debts, I need debts. Poppy, was it like the movies? Did a choir start singing? Did he smell like heaven? I bit my lip to keep from laughing out loud. Better than the movies, I wrote back. No choir, just a grade 3 flute player doing scales in the music block. And yes, sandalwood and something earthy, like rain on warm pavement. Daisy sighed, a long, dramatic sound that earned her a stern look from Mr. Henderson over the top of his spectacles. She mouthed an apology and then leaned in closer to me, her voice a barely audible whisper that felt like a warm hug. You're glowing, mate, she hissed seriously. You look like you've swallowed a light bulb. I feel like I have, I whispered back, my heart doing a little celebratory somersault. The rest of the lesson was a dreamscape. I tried to focus on Henry VIII and his endless quest for an heir, but my mind kept drifting back to the quad, to the way Ollie's eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed, and the way he'd looked at me not like I was just another girl in his year, but like I was the only person in the world who mattered. It was a terrifyingly lovely feeling. For years, I'd spent my time in the background, the quiet girl with the sketches and the sensible shoes, observing the world as if it were a play I wasn't quite cast in. But now it felt like the curtains had pulled back, the lights had shifted, and I was finally standing where I was meant to be. When the final bell of the day rang, the classroom erupted into the usual chaos of scraping chairs and zipping bags. Daisy grabbed my arm the second we were out the door. Right, she said, her tone businesslike, but her eyes dancing. The roasted bean. Now, I need a full, unedited, chronological breakdown of the official log updates. From the moment you left the music block to the moment Leo ruined the vibe. And don't you dare skip the bits where you felt a bit silly. Those are the best bits. We walked out into the crisp Somerset afternoon. The sky was that particular shade of pale violet that only happens in late autumn, and the air was thick with the smell of wood smoke from the nearby cottages. As we reached the main gates, I saw a familiar figure leaning against the stone pillar. Ollie. He was still wearing his football kit, a muddy streak across one cheek, but when he saw me, his whole face transformed. It wasn't just a smile, it was a recognition. Hey, he said, stepping away from the pillar. Hey, I replied, feeling that familiar, wonderful flutter in my chest. Daisy, ever the professional wingwoman, suddenly found something incredibly fascinating about a nearby bus timetable. Oh, look at that. The 402 is running 5 minutes late. I should probably go and stand near it. Very intensely, bye Poppy, see you Ollie. She vanished into the crowd of departing students with a cheeky wink over her shoulder. Ollie laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. She's a legend, your friend, he said. She's a menace, I teased, but a very supportive one. We started walking, not towards the bus stop, but just along the leaf-strewn pavement that bordered the college grounds. For a few minutes, we didn't say much. We didn't have to. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was comfortable, like a favorite old jumper. I meant what I said, Ollie said eventually, his voice dropping an octave. About calling you tonight, I've been thinking about what you said. About the mystery in your log. I looked up at him, the orange glow of the streetlights beginning to flicker on, and I think I'd quite like to be a permanent entry, he said softly, if the critics' review holds up. I stopped walking, turning to face him. The wind caught a stray lock of his hair, and without thinking, I reached up and tucked it back. He caught my hand, his fingers interlaced with mine, and for a moment, the whole world, the exams, the university applications, the tiny stresses of being 17 just vanished. The review is glowing, I whispered. 5 stars, would highly recommend to a friend. Though actually, I think I'll keep this one for myself. He grinned, that lopsided, heart-melting grin that had started this whole mess weeks ago. Selfish. I like it. He walked me to my corner, the spot where the lime trees arched over the road like a canopy. We stood there for a moment, the world quietening down as the commuters headed home. Tonight then, he asked. Tonight, I promised. He leaned in, a quick, soft kiss on my forehead that felt like a promise, and then he was heading back towards his own house, his shadow long and confident on the pavement. I watched him until he turned the corner. Then I turned and ran the rest of the way home, my heart racing. The house was quiet when I got in. My mum was in the kitchen, the kettle whistling a cheery tune. She looked up as I burst through the door, my cheeks flushed from the cold and the sheer adrenaline of it all. "You're home late, darling," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Everything all right?" "Better than all right, Mum," I said, grabbing a mug from the cupboard. "Actually, everything is brilliant." She didn't press for details, bless her, but she smiled as I headed upstairs. I went straight to my room, kicked off my boots, and sat down at my desk. The yellow raincoat was draped over the back of my chair, a bright pop of color against the gray evening outside. I pulled my official log out of my bag and opened it to a fresh, clean page. I didn't write a list of observations this time. I didn't note down the time he arrived or what he was wearing. Instead, I picked up my favorite fountain pen, the one that always leaked a bit of blue ink onto my thumb, and I wrote from the heart. Entry, the final beginning. Today I realized that the best stories aren't the ones you plan out in your head. They're the ones that happen when you forget to bring an umbrella. They're the ones that start with a smudge of charcoal and end with a kiss under a music block window. Ollie Miller isn't a mystery anymore. He's the person who makes the mundane parts of year 13 feel like an adventure. He's the person who looks at my ink-stained hands and sees something beautiful. And I think, just maybe, I'm the person who makes him feel the same. Being 17 is terrifying. In a few months, we'll be sitting in exam halls, writing our futures onto bits of paper. In a year, we might be in different cities, learning new names and walking new streets. But right now, in this room, with the smell of my mum's tea drifting up the stairs and the weight of a promise in my pocket, everything is exactly as it should be. We aren't masterpieces yet. We're still just sketches, rough lines, messy edges, and a lot of rubbing out. But that's the point, isn't it? The beauty is in the process. The beauty is in the mud, the rain, and the moments where you're brave enough to say, hey. I closed the book with a satisfying thud. Just then, my phone buzzed on the duvet. I scrambled over to pick it up, my breath catching in my throat. "Ollie, thinking about that cinnamon bun on Monday, is it too early to start a countdown?" I laughed, falling back onto my pillows and staring up at the ceiling. The stars were starting to peek through the clouds outside, tiny pinpricks of light in the vast Somerset sky. "Poppy, not too early at all. I've already put it in the log. It's officially a highly anticipated event." "Ollie, good, because I've got a feeling the sequel is going to be even better than the original. Sleep well, Poppy." "Poppy, you too, Ollie." I set the phone down and let out a long, happy breath. The room felt warm, the shadows soft and inviting. I thought about Daisy's face at the lockers, the way she'd mouthed masterpiece with so much conviction. She was right in a way. Not because we were perfect, and not because everything was figured out, but because we were together, navigating the beautiful, chaotic mess of growing up, one rainy Monday at a time. I looked over at my sketchbook. sitting open on the bedside table. There was a new drawing there, one I'd started during the history lesson. It wasn't a diagram of a monastery or a portrait of a king. It was a simple sketch of two people standing in the rain, their hands barely touching, their faces turned towards each other. It was simple, and it was honest. I picked up a pencil and added one final detail to the corner of the page, a tiny, perfectly rendered yellow raincoat. The world outside was dark now, the wind rattling the windowpane, but I wasn't cold. I felt like I was wrapped in a blanket of absolute certainty. The official log was no longer a record of a crush. It was the prologue to a life lived out loud. And as I drifted off to sleep, the only sound in the room was the steady, rhythmic beating of a heart that had finally found its rhythm. Tomorrow would bring more history, more revision, and more cold morning bus rides. But it would also bring a smile in the hallway, a shared joke over a lunch tray, and the knowledge that someone was waiting for me at the end of the day. Life wasn't a movie, and it wasn't a book. It was better, it was real, it was 17, it was us. And for now, that was more than enough, it was everything.